Okay, here I am right here, Brittany. I've got your work up, and I was looking at your writing, and you've heard me say this several times before in these early weeks in the class, is that I love it when students submit a nice, detailed, written synopsis of your observations working through the project, and this is certainly no exception because there's some very, very valuable information in here. I think one of the things that points to me and that shows me and indicates to me that you are learning is this comment right here. I tried to make the hierarchy work, but I think I did a decent job. But a decent job, my eye immediately goes to the hand because it's so different than the rest of the poster. And that's a good statement. That's a good lesson right there that we learn because in the planning stage we have to think about how are these illustrative techniques and illustrative styles and actual illustrations, are they going to be compatible? How basically are they going to play in the sandbox together? How well will they play together? And I think that's something that as a designer you always have to keep at the back of your mind is any kind of changes or further developing to make, how does that to relate to what's already there? Okay, so that's a great comment. Thanks for sharing. The other thing is I had struggled with concepts a little bit. I should have gone back to the drawing board. This, to me, again, indicates that you're learning. And this comment, my comment to this is start to trust yourself as a designer. You really want to start to beginning to trust your own eye. So in other words, early in the process, if you start to see problems, it's time to rethink. I don't recommend ever just changing a project midstream without talking to your instructors first, because in the real world, you wouldn't change a project. You would talk to your your creative director, your art director, or even the client and express your sentiment that I don't think this concept is working as well as it did on paper. I want to make these changes. These are the proposed changes, and take it from there. Do you see what I'm saying? So recognizing the need for change is something that is very, very, very important for any designer. So again, I was really glad to see that in your written um, observations. Let's jump right to the work, shall we? Okay. So I think that this is, it's still a great concept. I think that the initial concept showing the heart with the blood, giving blood to the other heart and giving that heart life, that's a strong, strong, strong concept. Um, I think it's probably a little stronger than this, but that's okay. This is where we're at right now. It's time to wrap this assignment up and move on to the next. That said, this is a strong concept too, and I know exactly where you're getting the mixed feelings. So I've got some recommendations. Um, Again, I don't want you to think that I'm choosing the other concept over this one. I think they're both strong. Now, one of the things I would recommend here, and I think one of the reasons you're finding this to be a little uncomfortable, and I think it does have some uncomfortable visual tension. And one of the reasons it does is because it appears this heart is giving blood to this arm. And we know that's not the case. The arm gives blood, not the recipient. This would be the recipient, right? So it creates kind of these mixed messages where the viewer is going, okay, this is a little uncomfortable because I don't know exactly what's going on because things don't make sense. The reason they don't make sense is the fact that this is higher than this than the arm in the composition, and indicating that the blood is probably flowing down this tube and into this arm. To rectify it, it's simple. Just place this arm above, place the heart a little bit below, and have this tube working its way down this way to the bottom of the heart as opposed to up this way. We know gravity, gravity is a wonderful thing, and it's a wonderful element for designers to keep in mind while designing. Okay, for example, in a magazine ad, you would never place an airplane towards the bottom of the ad, unless, of course, the plane was on the ground. Conversely, you would never place a helium balloon with a string on it at the bottom of a composition because that's not how gravity works. We would expect to see it floating. That's where it should reside in the composition, right? And I use that example to exemplify this a little bit further, saying that quite typically this blood is not going to flow uphill. It may be how it works, but in this situation, it looks like this is giving blood to the arm, where it should like the arm is giving blood to the recipient by making this just appear a little bit like it's moving down. It's going to work. I promise you it'll work. So try that. My only other recommendation is this. Now you did create this as kind of a tube, but I think it doesn't really indicate a tube. It should be thicker, and I think it should be a little bit more close to the color here. You've got a couple of hiccups in this path right here. This should be there's one right there. It seems like a bend in the tube. There's another one right there. Seems like a bend in the tube. What you want to do in these kind of situations is go to your smooth tool and just take your smooth tool and just run it right across those areas. If you take your smooth tool and just come right over here, not in this illustration, but the actual, just the illustration of the tube, you take your smooth tool and just run it right across here. That's going to smooth right out. It's a great tool and one that I use all the time to clean up my pen work. So think about that. The only other recommendation is to add detail to this hand. And I think that's really needed. Take a look at the tutorials for the shadow and highlight areas. To me, I think you've added this gradient, but the gradient doesn't really indicate shadow and highlight areas. You've got a light source indicated by this little reflection right up here, right? So presumably, and based on this gradient right here, the light source is up here somewhere, okay? So when you reconfigure the positioning, just try to add shadow and highlight areas. Go to the welcome to week 3 announcement, take a look at the tutorials, and there are wonderful tutorials on not only establishing and techniques for developing shadow and highlight areas, but also the reason and the conceptual reasoning as to why shadow and highlights work. So be sure to take a look at those tutorials located again in the Welcome to Week 3 announcement. All right, typography looks good. This word right here seems to be a lot bigger than the other words. So having emphasis on 3 lives is great, but these should all be typeset identically, okay? Oh, I would capitalize the 1 in 1 pint as well. All right, other than that, I think you've got some good typographic hierarchy is great. Good job there. Again, inconsistency there, and this kind of framing element and this framing element. More detail in the arm, reconfigure so gravity follows this logical progression. It will make more sense to the viewer. It will also rectify this big open space right up here. Okay, so if you have any questions at all, please let me know, and I'll be glad to clarify. But those are my recommendations, and I'd like to see those moving forward. So again, any questions at all, please let me know. Thank you very much.